Do you want me to say something into the microphone? Just wait like 30 seconds.
I'm going to try.
Yeah. Next week is Vegas, by the way. I heard it was 80 there. Or 75.
Does this sound okay? Oh, I did.
Okay. Scott, are you okay? We're good? Okay. All right. Welcome to the February 6th, 2025 North Logan City Council meeting. We are happy to have a full panel tonight. We will start with the Pledge of Allegiance led by Buzzy, after which Mark will say our opening prayer. Okay. Thank you.
Will the audience please rise and repeat after me? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Our Father in heaven, we're thankful to gather to seek to better and to protect, watch over, and support our city and its citizens. We're thankful for all that work, and we're thankful for those that watch over and protect us and be with them as they watch over us. We're thankful for the ability to hear and to listen and to reason together and pray for collective understanding and consensus as we meet. And we ask for this in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
All right, thank you both. I would entertain a motion to adopt tonight's agenda with no changes.
So moved.
Okay, motion by Joni, second by Buzzy. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, and we have our meeting minutes from, I believe, the January 15th, 2025, regular city council minutes and closed session minutes, and I would entertain a motion on that unless there are any changes. Okay, motion by Mark.
Second.
Second by Kenny. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, we will now do a recognition of an exemplary staff member. Tonight, that is Laura Lee Olson from the Recreation Department. Jesse Howe says, Laura Lee is an amazing asset to the Recreation Department. She's always willing to help with the numerous programs offered by the Recreation Department. In particular, she spent this Saturday from 7 a.m. to 10 p.m. organizing the countless basketball games, including the coaches, referees, scorekeepers, and each participant. Thank you, Laura Lee. I'll echo this. I see her there when I go to my kids' basketball games, and that is a tough job, and those are some long hours. So join me in giving applause to Laura tonight. All right, Alan, would you give us follow-up on issues from previous meetings?
I don't know if we have any particular follow-up meetings, so if we want to go to the public safety and then we'll go to the
Strategic directives, okay. Then let's do Chief Thompson. You give us your report. Okay. I think Alan had already turned it on, is that right?
Yeah, it should be on already.
Oh.
There you go.
I wonder if the battery's dead. You okay? Is that okay?
Working.
There we go. Excellent. Just to really start off quickly on maybe a legislative update, a lot at stake here locally particularly for our fire department and our local fire departments, law enforcement. We've actually put in for an appropriation of about $5 million for our training center, which would be super awesome. So if you hear Representative Thompson will be presenting that for us tomorrow in the first subcommittee meeting. So it's been kind of rapid fire shooting back and forth there, of course, with how the ledge session goes. So, you know, we're excited about that. Would be a huge improvement for the training opportunities for the area. We've actually, we're inviting Rich County Cash and Box Elder agencies to be able to plan, their training there. So it would, what we're planning with the props we're looking at, there wouldn't really be anything like it other than going down to Provo to the U4 area. So it would be good for all agencies, PD and fire. So we're excited about that. We'll see how that goes. Fully staffed, things are looking good with the fire department. As you know, it's budget time. Okay. I think the battery might just be a little bit low. But really, if we feel like things are good, our emergency manager will stand close to Emily. Make me blush up here. But we're excited to get Ron on board. We've been waiting a long time for that, so we're excited to see how that goes. We hope it goes super well. So otherwise, I think that's my report for today. Annual report, Jelaine and I are working on. We'll have some a little more detailed numbers for the run statistics here in North Logan and our other response areas. So looks like Alan was nice enough to pull up the latest summary from that. So hopefully the should be out by the end of the week, first of the week at the latest. So you'll see that soon.
Chief, I have just one question.
Okay.
Because I'm curious, are all fire departments unionized in the state?
No, good question. Most of your career fire departments are. Pretty, the corridor, I would call it the metro corridor of the state, is mostly unionized.
Logan's not. So Logan is not.
Logan is.
Logan is
Yeah,
unionized.
actually 100% membership in the union with all our firefighters. There's a few exceptions, like Layton Fire is not, but most everyone else on the Wasatch Front is. I can think there's probably a couple others, but Layton sticks out to me as being one that is not. But yeah.
I was going to ask you, I maybe missed, where would this training center be? Is it at your new facility?
Yep, the exact location there. So Logan City's committed the 10 acres there on that as a donation to the project and committed that whole area for that growth. It would be in conjunction with FFSL, the Forest Fire and State Lands, through the DNR. That's kind of the part that kind of helps with the funding, is we would also be helping the state. I guess for what would be important for North Logan to know as a group, really is no good central cache of equipment in the event of a big wildland or wildfire event. We've been super lucky for about a decade. That cache is sitting in some boxes in Box Elder County right now. I believe on the fairgrounds somewhere around there's what I'd heard. This facility would give them a building. They could put the cache there with equipment, and in the event that there's a big event here on our cache range or west of us, it's actually almost a perfect location for us. So it's a big deal, and it's just a win-win all the way around. So we're hoping the state has a little bit of money there, at least to get the project going. So
Yeah, well, keep us updated.
Chief, that 10 acres, is that by the test tower where Joni and I were at last
exactly.
spring?
That is the ground. And if you look to the north there, if you remember all the the nice weeds and things to the north, that's also the property that we would be expanding into. So it'll be neat. We're crossing our fingers. And if we don't get it this year, we'll keep rolling. It'll have some momentum. So.
Okay, great. Thank you, Chief. All right, Chief Goodrich, give the main microphone a try. I mean,
We'll try it and see.
do whatever you want. If you'd like to be closer.
I don't mind being up and close,
Is it on? I can't tell.
I think it's on. It sounds like it's working on there. So this week has been a pretty busy week. We've had one who's been out on sick leave, and then we've had another who's at training. But despite that, we ended up with 108 calls this week and 65 stops still. The majority of the calls this week were medicals that our guys were helping with. And then right behind that was accidents that our guys were out on. We have had a couple other sextortion cases that have come in on that. And it was kind of the week for it. I was asked to present a sextortion presentation to a PTA out in Smithfield. So we're finding that the other agencies in the valley aren't able or tied up, I guess, or willing to go do those presentations. And so we're doing those presentations, trying to get that message out there. On one of our cases, we found out this week too that Detective Curl had worked. Our suspect in that case pled guilty and ended up having 9 counts of exploitation that he was charged with 5 years mandatory each sentence, so 45 years on that, which was a fantastic outcome for that type of a case on that. So we're staying busy with that, and we had a sex offense too in the Walmart parking lot, and it was a stalking, and it turned into a sex offense as well that we've been tracking this guy down. So it's been a busy week for us.
Yeah, that hit the papers. So
Lots and lots. We are also working with Alan and with Jordan on the deer plan, trying to get some information for tomorrow's police commission meeting on that. So
great.
anyway,
Any
that's all.
questions for Chief Goodrich?
Okay, thanks, guys.
Save them for tomorrow, Kenny.
That's
Just
right.
kidding. And Buzzy, are you gonna be there? Okay, just to correct the record, I believe I said it's February 6th. It is February 5th tonight. So let's move on to the review of strategic directives and action items.
So this will be kind of the first. I'll run through this, and if this is okay, it's actually really good to go through these as I was looking at them and seeing what key updates. I'm going to fly through these kind of like I do with action items, but some key items I've highlighted. So if they're in kind of this off yellow color, kind of a tan color, those are the ones I'll probably go over in this meeting, but just let me know if you have questions on any other items, but they're key updates. So website updates. We have an intern that's working through that right now. He'll probably have a draft this week. He's worked with the department heads. Right now, he's working with the library to see if he can update their website to what they might be able to use. If not, Trend has already reached out and looked at other options that would all be less expensive than what they're paying now. So that's up to them. We're going to go through that. We'll update everything, and then we'll probably go out to everyone for feedback as to whether they like the new website, what can change. We really want to have that be a very high functioning, up to date website. Looking at this, the newsletter, could people opt in to electronic delivery? So luckily, Debbie's been working on this for several months. She's actually gone out to probably 4 or 5 different companies and worked with several different cities to try and see what other cities are doing, what is the best option, what software, because it's software that goes across the board. Not only is it mass communication, our latest newsletter printing provider is going out of business, and so several cities are scrambling right now. But it's an opportune time because we have all this lined up to where hopefully we can just crosswalk this over to the new company and have them carry it forward, and hopefully at a higher level, and we can get that out to more and more residents at that point. Meetings, thanks to the mayor, everyone involved in that. There's been a pre and post with our last city council meeting post regarding the items on the agenda. I think the residents really appreciate that. Same thing, social media posts regarding live stream links. Mackenzie's put that together, and so that should help people at least gain access to these meetings if they want to watch from home. General plan, everyone's very familiar with this. If you're not, we've had several meetings regarding this. Scott Perks has really been working extremely hard seeing the finish line a couple months out, but especially 1 month out or 1 meeting from now to go over draft approvals, but really trying to implement that plan. They've done a fantastic job to get it to where it's at right now, but then there will be a lot of work after that to codify several things. And that ties into more elements with teeth, so zoning plans and other things. Jumping down through economic plan, we'll go over a few things tonight. But we are working with those businesses that we've already talked about, several between near the sock factory, west of the sock factory, north of the sock factory. Those are several businesses we're working with right now to help them get started on construction. We'll go over a few of those tonight in the meeting. City Center, same thing as general plan. Going through those plans, we've actually met with a stakeholder today. The meeting went well, and we'll push that forward. Trails, we've really reached out to the county right now to carry forward the momentum of a lot of dialogue that we've had. Those trails are everything from the Bonneville Shoreline Trail, which has a ton of momentum right now, More progress has probably been made in the last 2 years in the previous 100 years regarding that trail. And so we're trying to push that forward where we're reaching out for more and more funding. The first segment will be between Hyde Park and Smithfield that will be installed with the current funding. And then we're seeing if next year we can apply, or even mid-year before next year, apply for more funding so that a section in North Logan can be finalized as well. Then there's they're called the multi-use paths, like 3100 North, where it has a paved path that's offset from the road. We're looking at different ways we can put that in on 1600 East and 1900 North. We had a meeting today with representatives from UDOT and Safe Streets for All program. We're also looking into CMAQ funding. That's federal aid funding that funded 2 of our roundabouts in the community. So we're looking into each of those different funding options to get those in. Jumping down through deer control. Thanks, Chief and Jordan, for working on that. That's a big request from several residents. Roundabout, just a quick update on 2500 North 8th East. They'll go out to bid shortly. That's kind of odd to think about because it takes months after that. But the UDOT process is so lengthy that they have to go out right now. They'll start going through bidding, and then they'll be prepped for construction in April, May, and June, July, August to get that squared away this summer. So they'll do all the utility work and then put that roundabout in. Recreation, we're also pushing the county. They've had some turnover, but I think they'll start meeting soon to talk about the feasibility study and getting that off the ground for phase 1, and then looking at funding for also phase 2 so that we can keep the ball rolling and have a actual product that will be beneficial to everyone, meaning the output of the study. Cemetery, they're also looking into that shed. We had 2 or 3 burials a week for the past several weeks. It's been a pretty intense time for the cemetery going through all those burials. And so it's at that point where we need a facility close. They're not trailering and everything every time we have to do a burial. Those are some of the updates just on general goals. It's kind of like the action items, but these things tie into the action items. But it's good to go over these goals because they kind of go by the wayside if we're not focusing on them each week. So are there any other questions on any of the goals or any specific action items from any of the departments right now?
I don't think so, but I just, if I could say 2 things. One, peach. That is a terrible color, Alan. It looks terrible.
It's tan on my screen.
But from a more substantive point of view, I think this is so great. I think it's really great to go through things in light of, what we're trying to accomplish. So thanks for kind of being the pioneer on that.
My colorblind eyes love the color, Alan.
Which is kind of maybe a bad thing. Okay. All right, then with that, let's move on to our current action items, beginning with a public hearing to receive input on proposed updates and amendments to the North Logan City Water Conservation Plan. The City Council may consider approval of the proposed updates and amendments following the public hearing. Let's begin. Jordan, are you going to give us the background on this one?
Yeah, so a state requirement for us as a city is to have a up-to-date water conservation plan. So every 5 years, we update the plan and we resubmit it to the state, and this is that plan. Basically, it goes through kind of a quick rundown, very brief overview of the layout of the city, our residents, our demand on the water system, what kind of water rights and shares we have, and then what codes we have in place for water conservation.
Okay, perfect. I'm making myself notes for a recap, so bear with me on that. Okay, then let's open up the public hearing, and then council, we can discuss this. So I'll read the instructions for speaking at a public hearing. Before you begin, please state your name for the record. Speak into the microphone so your comments can be recorded. Limit your statements to 3 minutes. You are not allowed to combine or bank minutes to speak on behalf of others. Phrase your opinions in the form of statements, not questions. A public hearing is your opportunity to express your opinions to the city council, not a time to ask questions or expect dialogue. Address your comments to the council, not the public. The council may ask questions about your comments in order for them to better understand you. In the future, note that if you have questions or need to discuss an issue, you may meet with the city council members or the appropriate city staff members before the public hearing where dialogue can take place. You may provide a written statement as your input for the hearing. You may read your entire statement or summarize it with the 3-minute limit. You may provide a copy of the written statement to the city recorder, who will make copies for the city council, and the written statement will become a part of the public record but will not be included in the minutes of the meeting. I understand from Scott that we have not received any email comments, and with that, I will open up the public hearing. Okay, seeing no comments, we'll close the public hearing and get discussion from the council on this. Any questions or comments?
Turn it on. Are there any key changes to this current plan that we should look at that you're addressing?
That's a great question. We actually,
I know.
the big changes you'll notice, this is very hand in hand with our water model. So if you remember seeing our water model, water master plan, that's where these tables and graphs, water use, current estimations come from. So those are the big changes in this one. The other things that would be big changes are the code changes that we've had. It just references those codes that, we've done secondary water. We've implemented a lot of water conservation strategies through the city. So it just references those. But as far as like meat and potatoes of big changes, it's really just boilerplate of getting what the state needs. So no big changes.
Thank you.
I'm curious, just how much water are we providing now versus what we did in 2022?
Quite a bit more. So just a little bit more. We've been going through, they're going through those numbers now. That's why it's not included. We didn't need to go all the way up to date. But if you look at that sheet, let's see, where did it go? That diagram, page 13. You've kind of seen a steady increase, and it has bounced a little bit. So total acre feet, we're averaging an increase of 3 to 4 acre feet a year of increase. So
Page 9?
Oh, page 8.
Page 8.
Yep. The table 6 on page 8.
Okay.
So that takes us from 2005 up to 2022. And you can see how it's slowly climbing. And we do have years where it will start to go down. And those are years where we usually have heavier water restrictions in place. And you can, like, with our growth, that should have been going higher, our water use. But with our water conservation plans and with a lot of the planning initiatives, that's actually stabilizing, which is fantastic.
Do you keep records? I'm assuming you do. I like this kind of information. You look at 2020,
Mhm.
way more water than
Yep.
2022. So was that because it was a hotter summer or
Everybody was home.
So-
Yeah.
Yeah.
20 COVID?
Yeah, it's just a variety of things. So if you look at the total acre feet diverted, that's how much we produced. And then it's total used and total loss in percentages. So it goes through a lot of that. But yeah, a lot of it has been water conservation. And, in those years, we implemented some some irrigation restrictions through the summer on culinary systems. So 2-day a week, 3-day a week strategies that have really brought those numbers down.
I think also the discussions that we've had with industrial users or larger users that we've seen a significant reduction based on the efforts of your department, right?
Yeah, that's true. The mayor brings up a big point. USU they went through their whole campus, innovation campus, and they cut millions of gallons a month. So they saved significant amounts of water. And that was about that.
I wasn't going to
Point.
name names, but yes.
It was fantastic.
The only thing I'd add to this, whoa, hello. This mic's working, clearly. I don't know, batteries are overpowered on this one. This document, oh my, okay. I hate my voice, so it's already awkward. This document is something that I think is really useful to post on the website and Facebook for residents that actually are following along the city. Do we actively do that?
Yeah, so it's one of the requirements that this is posted on our website.
Can we link to
We can-
Facebook too? It seems
Yeah.
like, or what, those, there's maybe like 32 people. But those are the 32 people that really want to know. So I think this is one that would be
Yeah, we can do that for sure.
beneficial to people.
Does planting trees over a period of time also help reduce because you're not having to maybe water as much where you've got shaded areas?
Yeah, it can.
And do we have any grants out there that would provide for us to have trees and maybe we do a volunteer planting or something?
Yeah, so if you look, like when the budgets come up, we have our parks budget that we do an Arbor Day fund. And Arbor Day, we have to plant so many trees per capita on public spaces. So that's how we plant most of our parkland, our rights of way and stuff like that. We plant a ton of trees that way. I think we probably average about 30 trees we plant a year just off of that. And so we're planting a lot of trees.
Cool. Thank you. That's all I got.
Just to put these things in perspective, though, literally, though, this is quasi out of necessity. The reason that North Logan is so far ahead on water conservation is partially because we're very good people, but it's more related because we did a poor planning job in the past regarding water usage. And so at that point, we had to go into extreme measures to make sure that we were okay with our water system in the past. And so that's why you see 8 tiers. When we implemented those 8 tiers, no other city in the valley had any tiered water rates. It was another 5 years before the next city had 2 tiers, and that was Logan City. And so we've got 3 different sets of tiered rates, or 4 different sets of tiered rates. We've got water conservation measures. We've got water restrictions every year. You look at each of those things, we have incentive programs for park strips, everything else. We're the only city in the valley that was doing these things. Now, I think there's a few more now, there's 2 or 3, but still it's light years ahead. And those things, like Jordan pointed out, the last 3 or 4 years have just saved our bacon with the city. And now we're doing those improvements. We received large grants and loans to install that water infrastructure, which will help carry us forward. It makes it a lot more sustainable system.
Okay.
Mayor, I'll motion.
Okay, sounds great.
I'll motion to approve the updates and amendments to the water, what are we calling the water conservation plan,
conservation
North Logan
plan.
City Water Conservation Plan.
Okay, motion by Buzzy. Any discussion on this? Okay, do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Emily. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that motion passes. Next, we'll go through, consider authorizing the signing of an agreement with Brent Dolly. We've discussed this before in depth, and this just kind of, as I understand it, reflects both Seth Tate's input on this and just the advice that we've been given on this, and reflects discussions that we've had in the past. Does anyone have, well, Alan, do you want to speak to this at all?
No, I think you covered it, Mayor. This is basically an agreement. It's updating an existing agreement to clarify certain things that were not so clear in the 2008 agreement. This one clarifies where the location of the right-of-way and the land will be located, along with addressing some of the concerns that are brought up by both the property owner and the city council. And so I think this is a kind of a win-win solution to make this agreement a lot more clear to everyone.
Questions on this from the council?
We did get the warranty deed.
You did.
Okay.
Should be in there. And thanks for bringing that up.
Yeah. We're lucky to have a real cheap lawyer on staff.
Very.
Okay. Any other questions or comments on this? If not, I'd entertain a motion on it.
I'll submit a motion that we approve the authorization of the signing of this agreement with Brent Dolly.
Okay. Motion by Kenny,
Second.
second by Buzzy. Any discussion? Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that motion passes unanimously. We'll move on to consider authorizing the signing of an agreement with a prospective business in the manufacturing heavy commercial zone of the city. Alan, do you want to go through this?
Yeah, this is something that is kind of unique to North Logan to bring these particular incentives before the city council, but we want to keep these things open so it's both very clear to the business that's coming to our community, prospective business, and also to the city council and those involved. There are financial considerations in these, and I think it's just a good policy to bring it before the city council for your consideration. This is a prospective distribution business that would be in the industrial area of our city. And it goes through this and it talks about what their obligations are to meet these incentives, and also what the city is going to provide. Now, this is in the CRA portion of our community, and it's in the new CRA, and so they would be eligible for those CRA benefits. Those would have to probably come before you though specifically. So it outlines in general what they are in here, but then they would have to come back before the city council as a redevelopment agency is how you'd be functioning at that point to approve those specific incentives. And they're basically just laid out. There's a little bit of leeway in those, but there's not much as to what can be changed within the CRA. That's just property taxes, according to that agreement.
Okay. Questions on this?
Alan, the performance criteria that we lay out in the agreement, how do we verify that those criteria are being met?
We could reach out at that time. In the past, we've reached out to them to say, are you meeting these bare minimums? They asked that question as well. And the city has kind of standard policies for them to qualify for these, and that's where they're coming from. Usually there's standard categories or things that they have to meet bare minimums. And so, yeah, if we reach out, I think it's in here after 5 years and 15 years, just to see if they are meeting those bare minimum standards for receiving these criteria. And then at that point, they can either adjust and bring their staffing up to date and their investment in that property, or they just wouldn't qualify for future incentives at that point.
Do we just take their word for it that they've done what they say they would, or is there a way to objectively evaluate that?
We could objectively evaluate the actual investment of that $4 million into that property. They just have to provide proof that that's what they've invested in that. That's very simple. And then the number of job creation, they could also just provide their payroll and redact anything in specific and just include the number of employees. They said that they should meet this though fairly easily.
Good question, Kenny. Any other questions on this? Then I would entertain a motion. Was that Mark?
So moved.
Motion by Mark,
I'll second.
second by Joni. Any discussion on this? Okay, all in favor?
Oh, sorry,
Aye.
I was gonna
Oh,
open up the discussion real quick.
Sure.
I mean, you guys know, I still have a hard time with these business incentives. I've been trying to wrap my brain around this, and I'm not totally comfortable with it, to be honest. Like, I understand why we feel compelled to do this, but I feel like a lot of us are kind of plugging our nose when we're doing this vote, and usually when that is the case, maybe we need to approach it from a different angle. You know, I think of like when my kids were in the 7th grade, they said they must have a phone because all their friends have a phone. And you go talk to all their friends' parents and they're like, yeah, I hated giving my kid a phone, but I felt like I had to because everyone does it. Feels like the same situation.
Can I
So-
help address that?
Sorry, go ahead.
So the improvements and what we're requiring help us attract other businesses, and we're competing against several other cities. I know where you're coming from on this, but if we want to attract a good, stable tax base here, we offer these incentives. Government also offers, I guess, incentives to us. We get grant money. So the cities that will use the grant money in the best beneficial way, it provides amenities for residents, and it provides for a healthier community. So if we're not doing that, other communities around us will. And
Yeah,
we've
that's what I mean.
experienced. So that's, I guess, for me, why I'm at peace with this is I want to attract the best here
Yeah,
and have great jobs for people that live in our community. So hopefully that helps.
I hear you. And the other communities are holding their nose while they're voting for the similar incentives too, I feel like. So
Oh,
that's
no,
why I
they-
say like,
It may not stink as much to them. I mean, I'm,
Perhaps.
They don't bring them before the city council. It's just deals that they're putting together.
I would
And-
say, if you want to look at one good example, Cal Ranch is probably the best example that we have of this. We had an empty building for how many years?
5 years.
5 years. That's a complete drain on our city. And so by giving these incentives to get Cal Ranch, and not only do we improve that building, but there are now 4, am I miscounting how many businesses have come in since Cal Ranch?
Four total business.
4 total businesses, and they did not get any incentives. So I feel like that win for us as a city to help our tax base, especially to help the community members in the city not have to shoulder the full tax burden, it feels like a win to me.
yeah, tactically, yes. I think strategically, this is the in the long term, it would be great to put all the municipalities on a level playing field so they didn't feel like they had to get involved in the free market to choose winners and losers, as far as tax incentives go. So I agree with you tactically, but I'm saying maybe we start talking to our legislative representatives about doing something a little more strategically, so that we can get out of this business.
Well, if I
providing
can
incentives.
speak to that, I think this actually gives us the opportunity to be on a level playing field, because what it does, the cities the size of Logan aren't able to offer incentives, and this is something that we're able to utilize to put us on a playing field that's level with cities that big, because they can bring in people hand over fist, right? Like they can bring in people. And I would say this is kind of a theoretical issue, but in reality, I think it's tantamount to saying, I don't think that the government should fund anything. And so we're not going to apply for grants. And so I think where I see this different than just fitting in or acquiescing to peer pressure, I think instead what it is if we were to say we're not going to offer incentives, it'd be a moral stance that would really handcuff our city. And it really would have an actual detriment to our city. It's just the reality of the landscape right now. And so while I understand that, I wouldn't characterize my feelings about incentives as holding my nose. I don't think it feels nefarious. I think we're being as transparent. I think we're being more transparent than we have to be. And I think where do you draw that line? Because we're trying to make businesses' lives as easy as possible in our city, and making it a favorable place for people to land. But we're trying to offset a strong campaign that says, hey, don't go to North Logan. It's, your business will die there. And so I think we've seen this play out, and Joni gave a good example with that. Emily did. But I think you're not dealing with a theoretical free market. It's just not the reality. And so I don't think that option exists to say, let the free market determine how things go. The government does have a role in that. And so while I understand it from a principled standpoint, I think it's just not the reality of where we are.
Maybe I could feel, or could I suggest, is it possible to add a little more structure around how we approach these incentives so that they can be a little more standardized? Like for example, the duration of this one is much different than the duration of some of the previous ones.
There's a chart that I sent on one of the previous city councils that has the different incentive packages for the different types of businesses that each have a range.
And then on top of that, Kenny, just so you have an idea of this, it took, 4 years to set up the CRA that this is a part of?
It took, yes.
So
4 years.
And that is a process that is super rigorous, and it's a collaboration between the school district, the county, and North Logan. Is that those
Those
three?
are the three key players.
So there's not, I think it'd be different if this were just us winking and handing some cash over. I think that this is what it is it's an economic tool to say, look, we're happy to, when you have a parcel of land that has nothing on it, that it's worthwhile to both the school district, the county, and the city to say, you know what, it's better to have this land be productive than to sit there and have nothing on it. And so Alan, if you wouldn't mind sending that to Kenny, I think that would be helpful to look at, because I can understand, Kenny, where it would feel like, where there's subjectivity, it can be kind of disorienting, with, is this fair? And is this something that, certain people would get an advantage over other people or other businesses? But, yeah.
Yeah, that would be helpful. Thank you.
Okay, we do have a motion on the table, so I will call for a vote on that. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that motion passes unanimously. Good points, Kenny. I think it's a good exercise That's kind of the philosophy of it. Okay, we'll move on to our work session items. And who else is excited about starting our budget season? We'll first hear from the Community Development Department. Alan is, no. Alan, is that you today?
This
Oh.
one is going to be Scott Perks. He loves the budget.
Sounds great.
It's always fun to go first, right? First of the season. Luckily, it's a fairly simple budget compared to other departments. We just have myself and then a part-time intern in the community development department under the wages and benefits line. That line, or those two lines, have incremental increases. But when you look at our overall revenue lines, we're a pretty small revenue generator overall. Our only revenue is through grants that we're able to receive through the state for various projects, and then subdivision fees and development related fees. And those are always hard to forecast because we never know what's going to come through the door. You know, it depends on what properties want to develop, depends on the scale of those developments. So our revenue lines are always very challenging to predict. As you'll see on the far right column, fiscal year 24, we pulled in 77,000, and then in 25 to date, we're at 15. So it can range all over the place. But so you'll see in fiscal year 26, it's a fairly conservative estimate for revenue. But jumping into the expense lines, wages, benefits, dues are for professional association dues. And then down below, we made a couple of adjustments. We used to have our fuel as a single line item, and then we had supplies and repairs as a combined line item. And it didn't really make a lot of sense to have supplies and repairs on a line, so we put fuel and repairs for a vehicle together and supplies by itself. You'll notice that the supply line has been 6,500 in the past, and part of that 6,500 was for vehicle costs for our couple of staff vehicles that we use. And so we're making some adjustments where we're not putting that cost in the supply line. At the bottom of the budget, you'll see in that red box that we're just going to put away a little bit of budget each year towards future vehicle replacement costs. So it's kind of a savings fund instead of having it in that supplies line. Travel training, staying flat over the past several years. Phone, technical consulting. That line item for technical consulting is coming down because we are through our big planning projects with the general plan and city center master plan. So we're bringing that down from 30,000 down to 20. There's always a chance that we're going to need some professional consulting, especially after the legislative session. There's always something that comes out of that. So we'll leave that for a rainy day. Legal, we split legal costs over all the departments, so there's a little bit in there. Our dues to Cache County are increasing. In the past, they've had a flat rate of 13, but they're bumping that up to about 16,000 for GIS services and other recording fees, those types of things at the county. So that's something that is going to be increasing. And I think I actually amended a different version of the budget, so that's not showing there. It's showing 13 in that line, but it'll be about 16.2 or 16.3.
So the 13 is the FY25 number, is that right?
It's shown in the FY26 proposed, right there where the mouse is.
Yeah, it's showing nothing in the prior years though, so I'm just trying to calibrate.
Yeah, the reason is because we used to have a single line item. Last year we split it up a little bit. So legal, Cache County dues to CMPO, those are all under a single line item. We split it out so we could track it a little bit carefuler, and that's why it's showing as a first expense on this line item. But that 13 will be about 16.4, 16.3. I forget what that was, but it's about a $3,500 increase that they're charging now. There's a new line item for software. That's for our permit tracking system that we use for our land use permits, subdivision review. In the last year and a half, the state has changed how we review subdivisions. There's a certain timeline that we are required to provide reviews, and so we needed to kind of up our game from paper submittals to digital submittals so we could track that better and be on time with those mandates. Admin allocation, that's going to be a similar line item that you see with all departments, and it helps pay for our general office admin costs. Overall, expenses are coming down just a little under 10 grand with that reduction in the professional and technical consulting over the past fiscal year. Do you guys have any questions on where it's at?
I'm oddly excited about the digital submissions. I think that's probably long overdue.
Yeah, for sure.
So the consultant allocation, so that's for the consultant hours that will get billed in, we anticipate there will be, I mean, the general plan will be wrapped up by FY '26.
Yeah,
But-
so in the past, the general plan it was funded by UDOT partially. We had to match it with 20 grand, and we split that 20 grand over the past 2 fiscal years. And so in this last fiscal year, there was $10,000 that was associated with the general plan. UDOT paid for 80 grand, or I think it's 65 actually, and then we came to the table with a 20 grand match. So right now, this fiscal year 26, the 20 grand that's in there now is just in case we need to hire a consultant in this next fiscal year for whatever reason that might come up. There's always something with the legislature, so we'll see what comes out of that.
Well, and
session.
some of those bills that are still in committee are a little scary, so.
You scroll up to the top of the page, the top of the sheet. Kind of in a similar vein to what Kenny was saying, is there a reason that we would subsidize applications to the tune of $140,000?
As far as our department never pulls its weight in revenue.
Well, I'm saying that should we, it goes to Kenny's point that we're subsidizing economic development by using funds that aren't recovered in fees for the work that comes in. Now, your job description is bigger than what we collect fees on. But if we're looking at subsidizing issues, which is what Kenny talked about on the other issue, do we look at subsidizing issues on this point and say people that use the department ought to pay for the department?
Sure. And, in some of these incentivization packages, you'll see that there's waived fees for applications for subdivisions or what have you. And that's just a way that the city can say, hey, we'll work with you in good faith to get you through our processes. We'll waive these fees as, small fees. But from a subsidization standpoint, that's pretty standard across all of our incentivization packages is to waive, development review fees, for example.
Do we have a way to track that? Do we know how much we're waiving?
We certainly could. We'd have to look at all the agreements that are approved, and that would be fairly simple for us to round up what was waived for the previous year.
Could be as an expense item.
So we can look at that, but looking through here, just a reminder, we've set these up so they look like enterprise funds. But keep in mind that 7 years ago, we didn't even have any revenue lines in the general fund. So every department was 100% subsidized by the general fund. Like there wasn't an ounce of revenue that was brought in by any of our general fund departments in grants or any other way. It just disappeared into the budget as well. It went into the expense accounts as offsetting. And so one thing we need to look at, though, to speak the point, when you look at true revenue coming in zoning and subdivision fee, that line didn't even exist about 4 or 5 years ago. And so that's a newer line that actually revenue does come in through the community development department. I think we need to look at that. I think that one is probably a little bit conservative because if we have 4 or 5 developments that come under 2 or 3 this next year, I mean, those could be more in the 20 to 30,000 range, which still doesn't fully subsidize, but it's cutting down on what would be called the net demand on the general fund out of each of these departments. So when you're looking at general fund department, you're going to have a loss in each of the different departments. But keep in mind, this is very new. Back in the day, it was just pure loss. Every single general fund item was a pure loss. There was no revenue that was brought in.
Well, and I guess just to maybe clarify what you're saying, Mark, are you saying because I think the community development or the planning services that you provide, they can't all be tied to, like when you're overseeing a general plan, the bulk of this budget is Scott's salary, right? And so you're not going to recover all of that money in revenue because he's offering a value that is to the city itself.
And that's what I'm saying, that your scope of job is broader than where the revenue is coming
Yeah,
from.
and I think like when we're talking about impact fees and application fees and stuff like that, that is all determined by the studies that we have done. Those are within the range of what we can ask for. But I mean, there's just so much that, and maybe Scott, you can speak to this, but there's so much within Scott's job description that you're not going to be able to recover value for. I mean, it's, I guess, similar to any department head, right? That like a library director, you're not going to be able to say, look, patrons, we can't have any losses because you guys should be paying for all of this. It's just not really how department heads work because they're doing so much administrative work.
I get that. It's just, this is the first budget we're looking at, and the concept that Kenny's talked about of where we subsidize. And this is a situation where it makes sense to subsidize because we're using general fund money to do this project, which I think is a good use of money. But it goes to Kenny's overall point of where do we spend our money, either through incentives or through actual dollars out.
I was just going to pull on that thread and ask, when fees get waived, who's the decision authority on that, and what approvals have to take place for some impact fee or application fee to be waived?
That would have to come to the city council through the development agreement.
And tell me,
The previous economic incentives have no bearing on anything that we're talking about now. There's no developmental fees that are coming in through that previous incentive package.
Scott, could you give us just like ballpark of like an annual amount that we've waived fees?
Trying to remember this last year.
But I'm saying, is it tens of thousands of dollars? Is it less than 10?
Yeah, I would guess it's somewhere in the ish range, because if we waive, like, for example, a subdivision fee for example, the 3100 North subdivision, which is one of those businesses that are looking, that's one of those things that we could have gotten $2,500 through the development review fee process. Similar to the 2850 subdivision for the Rush development there.
Okay.
That's one that we partnered, and so we didn't charge ourselves a fee to help them through the process. But I think to Mark's point, I think you're asking that was potential revenue, and it was waived in an effort to incentivize a business. And I don't know that you would necessarily call it an expense, but it's unrealized revenue that could have been charged, and so it's tracking what could have been charged, so you understand, well, what is the impact of how much is waived, and it's an investment at the end of the day to bring in a tax revenue generating use or business, or to stem or to stimulate other businesses to come. So we could track those and have like a yearly total of waived fees to understand what did we do this year in an effort for economic development.
I think the difficulty with that is that you don't have an equivalent where you're saying how much revenue did this generate? Like absent this business,
Yeah.
you know what I'm saying? Like we would be, I'm okay, obviously, like I think more information is great, but I don't think you're ultimately saying, look, we spent $5,000 and we got $200,000. I think that's you just have to look holistically.
But that's the same with all the budget items, all the expenses. We're not trying to figure out how much we generated from the expense. We're just looking at expenses.
Well, but I'm saying, like, if your overarching question is Scott's department self-sufficient?
No, I'm not saying that. I'm just,
Well, I think the word subsidy implies that we're saying the city's spending money and not receiving value.
I didn't mean to do that. I'm saying that we're getting a benefit. It just may not be an economic. It's an overall benefit to the health, safety, and welfare of the community.
Yeah.
Like you said, with the library, or we don't generate money on police and fire, but we certainly see an inherent big value to that. Same thing. It just helps us understand. But on an item like community development, where we are receiving income and we deal with fees, and fees are tied to the value of the services rendered, we can look at, are those fees appropriate?
Yeah. Alan, I feel like you were going to explode. Did you have something to say?
No, you guys answered it. But this comes up every 2 or 3 years, just to explain this. We talk about what incentives we provide. So we have an incentive tracker. We've got all of these things. We track every incentive that we offer businesses, and they do it through the treasurer. But every 2 or 3 years, this question comes up: do we offer incentives? What is it providing through community development or other departments? Granted, most of the fees that come in are distributed to other different departments through impact fees, through building permit fees, and we'll go over that shortly. But when we did this the last time, like Scott Perks pointed out, when you're waiving, it's rare that you have a developmental fee with a business. It's very rare because there's usually something there on a lot
Yeah.
and you're just adding the business. But when they do have one, like the ones on 3100 North and other businesses, usually you're waiving like $2,500 or $3,000 that would go to Scott's department. And when we added these up the last time, this came up with businesses like Cal Ranch or other businesses, and we just tracked it over a 5-year period. So we gave up like probably $10,000 or $15,000 in several of these businesses. And then we look at the 500,000 that we had accrued over that same 5-year period. And it's astounding, like how much you bring in through very little incentives at that time. So we can look at that again, and we've done that in the past.
I mean, to me, the policing power that we have is in approving those incentives as they come in. And I think that's a judgment call that we as a council have to make. Like, that's what we're charged with making on a case-by-case basis. So I guess I just am a little bit reluctant to say, could we be getting more? Because I think the answer is sure. But I think that we've kind of made that assessment of saying, is this worth an investment of waiving fees? So I'm not trying to shut down the discussion. I'm just trying to make sure that we're framing it in a way that's helpful.
I also think if we're going to have this discussion on somebody whose department is actually going to be costing less than they did the last year, I feel like that's, I don't know, maybe the word I'm searching for is like, this is not the best timing. I think it's a little off to be like, where are we getting money when it's like, well, you cut your budget by almost 10 grand. But you know what? We should really make sure you're getting in a couple extra.
This just happens to be
thousands.
the first budget we're going
I
through,
mean-
so it'll come up all the time.
Okay. Anything else on that, like Scott and then Mark and Kenny?
No.
I just had a separate question. I don't think this will be a big one, but just help me level set. So with the fuel and repairs, does community development have their own dedicated vehicle, or do you just rent time off of one of the fleet vehicles of the city?
Yeah, we don't have our own vehicles. There's 2 vehicles that are shared between all of the office staff members, and the library also uses them as well, just for running to meetings in town or picking things up that they need for
Gotcha.
activities and such. So we just kind of share that cost,
And you have a way to
just to show that
obligate
we're
the
pulling
funds.
our weight.
Right.
Yeah.
Right, okay.
Okay. Thank you, Scott. I think this year has been a particularly big victory. And just so you guys know, talking to other cities who don't have city planners, it's frankly terrifying to me to kind of see how that plays out, to not have someone who is kind of the gatekeeper and making sure that we're thinking long term. So really appreciate your department, and it just keeps getting better and better every year. Like I just say with confidence when we're dealing with people who are asking about code that Scott has a computer within his brain. So really appreciate you, and keep us updated on this. What will you do when we don't have a general plan and city center plan?
Those plans are chock full of goals and
That's true.
implementation
You're
items
right.
You're
and
probably not that close to the finish
milestones.
line.
You're writing code.
Keeping up with the legislature.
All right, we are going to move on to the building inspection department.
Okay, I can cover that
Oh,
one.
it's Jordan tonight.
Yeah.
All right.
And unlike Scott,
Oh,
this
yes.
budget covers itself. Scott.
Unlike.
Try that sometime, Scott.
Yeah, come on. No, so with our department, building inspection, you guys are probably all aware, and hopefully some of the new council members are as well, that we have a agreement with Hyde Park City where they do the inspections and the review for building permits. So we take the building permit, they apply through the city. Scott does do a bunch of review on that, so he pays for himself a little bit there. But we take those fees here, and then 80% of that total fee goes to Hyde Park City to cover their professional services and their on-site inspections. And so that top three lines are the building permit fee, plan check fee, and then the North Logan City Sheriff fees. Those are projected building permit fees based upon what we've seen in the past and the available lots in the city, and also the upcoming subdivisions that we can see coming up. And then if you go down, this is how we break out our payments to Hyde Park City and what we keep ourselves. So it goes through that top line, that 205, is that's pretty much our direct to Hyde Park City. And then the professional and technical, and third party, if we have a third party review, we have to send that out to that. That's where that money comes out of. And so this year we're projecting to make about $60,000. Note on that is, so if the city itself, like we build our community building next door, we cover those inspection fees, but we still have to pay Hyde Park for those fees. So that if we build a building, that's where those inspection fees come out of. There you go.
Okay. Any questions for Jordan?
I do have a quick question. So the balance, where does that, if we end up with a net positive on that, where does that end up? Does that just go back up the general fund? Okay.
Just so you know, before 5 years ago, North Logan City had never realized a net gain.
You said has or has not?
Before 5 years ago, the city had never realized a net gain on the
Okay.
building inspection department until we contracted with Hyde Park.
Okay. Any other questions on this? Thanks, Jordan. And then we'll go over the fiscal year 2026 budget proposal for the Economic Development Department.
Okay. And similar to Scotty P, this one is a net loss. So going through this department, going down just the wages and benefits, what this essentially covers, if you look down through here, it's kind of broken out. But wages and benefits, that covers an intern that helps us with several different things in the community. And then as you go down through it, there's actually another third-party contract that we have. And they're kind of broken out in their duties. One reaches out to new businesses primarily. They overlap. But the one reaches out to attract new businesses, and the other individual primarily works with existing businesses to help them grow. And we've seen growth within both of those areas this past year. So going down through here, there's not a ton of change from last year to this year. Again, each year it kind of depends on what we do as far as business alliance meetings or other things or community promotion. This year will actually go down in business incentives, so that's where that is directly tracked for certain businesses. And that's only related to a single business this coming year, and that will increase the following year when other businesses will have a tax incentive that goes out. But what you're seeing here, so you get to the bottom, you look at a 207,000. That may seem like a very high number, and normally we only end up around 150. This is kind of a worst case scenario type budget. But in that time that we've actually had an economic development department, I'd say the last 6 years, 5 years, I will say easily every year they're probably bringing in $500,000 to $700,000 in what they brought in over that time. So you look at the net gain directly, horrible loss.
I can think of a million that you're not accounting for as well.
Yes, there are. Yeah. In donations, obviously, North Logan is the highest in the history of the world. We're up to $12 million.
Don't look that up.
Over the past same distance or that same time period, which also relates to what we're looking at with economic development, which ties into donations. But yes, probably 500,000 to 700,000 that we looked at about 2 years ago.
Alan, on the Ice Arena sales tax allocation, that this is our final year with that. Is that accurate?
Scott is the expert with this. So that tax was actually set up when the Ice Center was completed. They needed some support to get started. So they entered into an agreement in 2001 with Logan City, Cache County, North Logan, and Hyde Park City. And each of them agreed to, in signing, a certain fraction of sales tax that goes to them. And in the beginning, it started out as about $10,000, and now, as you can see, it gets up to around the point of 70. $1,000 or $80,000 per year that goes to them directly from North Logan City. Logan backed out of the agreement after the first year. The rest of the cities have maintained in the county to support them through that tax allocation. 5 years ago, they came and asked for an extension on that. The agreement was up, but right now the good news is the council at that time said, we won't do another extension. And the ice arena agreed that at that time they have an endowment, and that endowment over those 5 years, the projection was increasing at a rate where they would be self-sustaining. And so once that's up, that's expired, and the previous council said they would not consider renewal of that because they should be self-sufficient at that point.
That's good news.
And that's up when, did you say?
It should be this year or next
It's
year.
December 2025 is what it says in the line.
Calendar year. Yeah. So, okay, so a couple questions. You said 70 or 80K. I'm only seeing like 50s in that, on that.
Oh,
line
sorry,
item,
I was
line
looking at the
24.
wrong line. Sorry, I'm looking at the line above. It is 50 to 60 is what's
Okay.
coming in.
So if that agreement ends at the end of this calendar year, shouldn't the number be roughly half of what it was in FY25 for FY26?
Because it's calendar year versus fiscal
It's
year.
a
Yeah.
calendar year. It's the county calendar year that you're looking at.
Yeah, so I guess what I'm saying is that's about half of FY26. So I was expecting FY26's allocation to that ice arena sales tax to be about half of FY25's.
That's a good point. We can look into it when it hits that point. It'll just trigger at that point, and the sales tax will end, and then that will come back to North Logan City at that point. It's a good point. We need to watch that.
So meaning
When
it
that
gets
disbursement
diverted currently and it will not be diverted anymore?
Yes.
Okay.
On line 314, is that those are professional fees at what? Part-time, right? Half the year or
Which
1,000
one
hours a
are you
year?
looking at? Sorry.
The
314.
65.
314.
Account 314.
Line 20.
314, 10,
Just
4,
remind me,
65,
that's-
314.
is
That
that's a
is the
part-time
contract with Business Dynamics.
and part-time, right? So is
No, the part-time's up at the top, the 10, 4, 65, 110. So the one down below is solely just a contract with a
So-
third-party business.
okay. So we've got isn't the line 12 the intern?
Line 12 is the intern, and line, sorry, I have to look back. Line 20 is the
Yep.
Business Dynamics.
Yeah, but I'm just asking that it's about a part-time contract, we would say, right? So about,
Yes,
Yeah,
when
about
we
20
looked
hours
at
a week or
hiring a
so.
full-time economic development director, it was around total wages and benefits would be around 120.
well, I think we're getting a steal for that part-time person.
Yeah.
I just wanted to make sure that was the hour. So yeah, I'm with you, but
Yeah, and we're competing against a city that probably spends around 500,000 per year in wages and benefits.
Okay.
sweet.
Other questions for you guys?
Yeah, just because I feel like maybe I probably ask this every time. Line 6, it's Tour of Utah revenue. Why do we still have that line? Okay.
We keep accounts in there out of kindness to Scott, because to create one line, there's actually 6 lines to 9 lines behind the scenes that are working.
Okay.
So each time we create one, we usually leave it or we repurpose it in the future. That was created the year that we had the Tour of Utah coming through North Logan.
2019?
2020, 21, somewhere through there. 2020, I think, is when they came through. But they, 2019,
Probably.
somewhere through there. They brought in a considerable amount of revenue when they came in.
I don't
19.
doubt that. It was more that I feel, like I said, I'm pretty sure I ask this every year because I forget every year why we keep it. Sorry,
Yeah.
Scott. Make you
I
ask
didn't
those
know
questions
that,
again.
so good reminder.
They might come through again, right?
They no longer do it, but yeah,
Oh.
you're right.
Yeah.
They could, somebody did.
You can
They
tell I'm a
stopped it
huge-
in 2022, from
Oh.
my understanding.
And once a line item is in our accounting software, it's there forever
Okay.
because of historical value. But we can repurpose it.
They'll take lines
I
all the
do-
time and
No,
repurpose them, so
it
we'll bring
just-
that before you.
I just was thinking like, this doesn't really, again, I probably ask this every year because I'm always like, well, clearly we haven't been using it for a lot of years when it's all zeros. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
No, it looks great. I'm incredibly excited to see. how it's been going.
It really is dead.
Huh.
Look at
Okay.
that.
Anything else on economic development? If not, we'll move on to updates regarding the North Logan City General Plan and City Center Master Plan.
Do you want to just hit that document with the upcoming dates? Just a quick recap. January 31st was the end of our open public comment period where it went out to the public for several weeks for just open public consumption and commenting. We met with our steering committees back on the 4th, so Tuesday of this week, for both the general plan and the city center master plan to review the public comments received. And we did receive some, but not many, which is a good sign because we've had over a year's worth of public comment. And there's not many controversial issues that people are concerned about at this point. So we did review those. There will be a couple of minor updates to the final documents. But our plan is for the Planning Commission tomorrow to hold a formal public hearing and to formulate a formal recommendation to City Council. If that is successful and they feel comfortable doing so, then it would likely come to your agenda on the 19th for review, consideration, and potential adoption. So that's kind of the end of the line for the plans themselves for adoption, and then we jump straight into implementation, where we're going to be making a lot of adjustments to our ordinances to put the policy guidelines in the general plan and city center master plan into codified code. Our contract with Rural Community Consultants does cover a lot of that work, and behind the scenes we've started working on some of these text amendments that need to come before Planning Commission and then to City Council for adoption. So I would imagine over the next 6 to 8 months, we're going to have several text amendments coming through to address the general plan's goals and policy directions. And in addition, the City Center Master Plan will be working on some form-based code and guidelines for the design elements for that specific geographic area in town. So that's the next several months down the line, but the end is in sight for the plan adoption period, and then we'll get to work on implementation. Do you guys have any questions on that?
Yeah, I just remembered this. Because we will be working specifically on the code to update it, does this mean any potential developments that come in will hit that pause period while we figure out what we want it to be?
Yeah, so
Okay.
state code allows us to, it's called pending legislation, essentially, where if we're working on something that is formally in the works, a development, if they were to submit, would have to either wait until that code is done, or they could work with us to implement whatever code adjustments are into whatever they're working on, so they could be approved shortly after the code is adopted.
Okay.
So yeah, that's something that we do have the luxury of working through.
That's along my question. How do we trigger that pending?
As long as it is formally in our process, we can show that we're working on that. Typically, we'll put it on an agenda for Planning Commission, and we did review this with Planning Commission. It was the last meeting where we reviewed a timeline of various packets that would come to them for consideration, and those packets do include a description of those adjustments we plan to make. So it's out there to the public. They know we're working on it, but as long as we diligently work through those processes and don't just hang it up for a year, then we're good to work through it without having development pressure, trying to not use what we're working on.
Do we have a time limit of when we can say we're working on it, or is it really kind of open-ended?
It's technically 6 months is what the time limit is. I foresee a lot of these adjustments that will be made as being beneficial to both the city and the development community. So there is an incentive for them to use the new language. There is some
I mean,
value
I
to be-
also see it that way, but
Yeah, we do have 6 months, and we will be aggressive on our consideration of those. Our tentative timeline hopes to have it done before 6 months, but we all know that there's going to be a lot of things, especially when we're contending with the legislative session, and likely we're going to have to consider what comes out of that for code updates. So we'll work through it, but I'm not too terribly concerned about having development pressure, trying to not use our most recent planning.
Okay.
That's it.
All right. Thanks for that update. Let's go on to updates regarding North Logan's water capital improvement projects.
Just a couple of quick things. So we are well underway with the water tank going out to bid in the next week. It is out to the Division of Drinking Water for their review. The other item, we did apply for another grant with Senator Wilson for some water lines up in the bench area to tie in some distribution, which is a big project. And then a couple other things. We'll be going through testing our wells in the coming weeks to get those back, basically to understand exactly where we're sitting right now, how they've weathered, and project those. We'll do that with Sunrise Engineering. And then, we should have those bids back for the tank and transmission line probably into March. They want to give them about a 3-week bid window on that. So I'll keep you guys updated on those bids as they come in.
All right. Well, Jordan covered for me while I was doing some other really hard things out of the country. A week ago Monday, right? And the vote on that RFA is this Friday, as I understand it. So we'll just keep you updated on that. But I think it'd be really helpful to have some of that funding. So thank you, Jordan. Okay, let's get updates on the Civic Center.
Oh, just very quick updates. You can obviously see the large building coming in. Not right now unless you jump. But the walls are nearly complete. Once they're in, those are the walls and the forms. They'll pour the concrete in. They've done several pours this last week. And then they'll put the roof decking across the top and then pour the roof at that point. They're doing a lot of the infrastructure work on the inside of the building, on the walls and everything else. So they've been doing several things the past couple of weeks. And then the brochure for fundraising is probably in the draft format right now. And we'll take a look at that in the coming weeks and be reaching out to prospective donors regarding that. It's fantastic news that we have some donors already lined up and then others that should be in the works at that point, which is great. We've hosted several other cities and they literally just kind of stare at some of these buildings that we put in the last couple of weeks and years and months. And they all ask how you do it. And they just say, oh, there's just like one donor. But no, it's really a community-wide effort, both from the community putting together capital funds and then several donors putting together grants. And so just hats off to everyone and working through that process. And then just a thanks to everyone who's helped out with the general plan and the community or city center plan. It's been a fantastic process, but I mean, Scott's, as the mayor pointed out, I don't know if he'll know what to do with himself after we get done with this process because it's so difficult to go through this whole thing. So thanks to everyone for going through that. It's been a lengthy process. You've been here late nights putting that together, so thanks to everyone.
Okay, thanks, Alan. Okay, let's move on to reports from city officers. Chiefs, you're done. Jordan, Scott, Alan. Okay, I will give you my update really quick. No, I'm gonna jump. You didn't interject. No, just a little update on the county sales tax issue. It's kind of becoming a mayor versus county fight statewide. There is a bill that proposes that they restrict the use of those sales tax, the transportation sales tax, to just capital improvements, buildings for public safety. Restricts, can't use it for fleet or operating expenses or salaries. There's a lot of pushback from UAC. And so we'll see. We have a ton of support from Representative Thompson. Representative Snyder is currently opposed to it. So I'll keep you guys updated on that. We as mayors wrote a letter to our representatives. Most of the mayors in the valley signed that in support of these changes. We feel as though the public safety exception for those taxes didn't ever contemplate a county removing that public safety from their budget and supplanting it with the transportation tax. So anyway, I'll keep you updated on that. You just never know how those things are going to play out with the legislature. And then also just kind of keep your fingers crossed for this Friday on the RFA. It always is kind of a roller coaster ride with any of those. And then really grateful for Mark's participation in the legislative policy committee with the Utah League of Cities and Towns. He attended this Monday, and they give updates on what's happening in the session. So that'll be super valuable to have his expertise on that. Okay, fine, Alan, it's your turn.
Just to update one thing, and thanks to Mark as well. Mark, if you could keep us updated on that House Bill 368.
All 17,000 lines of it. Yeah.
Yes, whatever the number is and whatever bill it is, the monster that's coming through. The reason we need to be, if you could keep us up to date on that specific item, is because
It's one big, beautiful bill.
It is. But it goes across all these different departments because of its implications regarding bonding, warranties. When you have to put in certain infrastructure, it can be very damaging to a city. It basically removes a lot of the protections that cities have or have implemented to ensure that a lot of the infrastructure goes in and residents who move into subdivisions aren't left high and dry, which we've seen. And so that's why those protections are in place. And so if you could just keep us up to date, and if there's anything we can do, let us know. But along with this is a completely different item, just events coming up. Jane Austen Ball, I think they only have about 20 spots still open out of the 170
Amazing.
or something like that. That's
Makes me so
incredible.
happy.
It's a very popular event. It's built up over the last couple of years, so hats off to Trent and his staff. There is a public meeting coming up for the UDOT Main Street Study. They always call us the Logan Study. The formal name of it is the Logan and North Logan Main Street Study. But that is at Mount Logan Middle School on February 25th from 4:30 to 6:30 p.m. We need to get the word out as much as we can so that people come and they provide their input regarding that. The reason we say that is because it can be very far-reaching if people are interested in that, because there's alternatives to select, and some of them are very limited. They just literally talk about Main Street and even shutting down lanes on Main Street. I don't know how that could happen, but that is one of the options. The other ones that North Logan City's been pushing for opens up options like 200 East, 200 West, 400 West, and 600 West through all these communities, and to alleviate Main Street, which we hear a lot of support for. However, UDOT's not hearing that. And so we need to let residents know that, so they come out in numbers to let UDOT know their concerns regarding the different alternatives.
Sorry, go
No,
ahead.
go
Mayor.
ahead, Kenny.
So it would be of benefit to have a large number of people there emphasizing that the key preposition is through, not to, as far as the use of Main Street? Is that, I mean, I can try to get people there if that's
And
what you're
just
saying.
state
I was gonna
that
say it's the worst
exact
time for
thing.
me, so if you can,
So yeah, Kenny, that's exactly right. And I was just going to expand on what
That's
Alan
exactly
said, because I'm going to really try and hit this, because we reached the end of the consultant study period with the Main Street study, and literally, I don't know how many meetings did we go to where all the
4 or
mayors,
5.
but I mean, this very intense process, and we asked that the through not to get changed every single meeting, and every single meeting it was met with, oh, well, okay, so, and ultimately the recommendation that came out of that meeting, it was presented to a group of mayors, and anyway, a big group. And what the ultimate recommendation was: raised medians in downtown Logan, changing one of the lanes to a bus lane in either direction, and doing bulb outs and no left turns and things like that. Most of the mayors, I would say actually unanimously, the mayors there and Senator Wilson expressed disapproval of that it wasn't reflective of reality or of a solution that will actually address the Main Street problem. We are having a really hard time as leaders getting that to sink in, because what they say to us is, you're wrong. People are coming in droves to downtown Logan to window shop. And so what I'm hoping for is just that people describe how they use Main Street. Because we've said this, every mayor has said it in some way or another, that everyone who's from here avoids downtown Logan unless you have to go there. No one's driving no one drives on Main Street, especially during the busy times. And I think it's actually counterproductive to say to slow down traffic there, because I think at some point you just choke any economic incentive to go down there. Like, I think you just avoid it altogether. So really, I don't even want to influence how people respond to it. We just need to have people's voices be heard, because there's an outsized representative of, businesses in downtown Logan. And I'm sympathetic to that. I think Senator Wilson was a really compelling voice there, because he said, I've been through, 4 iterations of this study, and we've tried this already and it doesn't work. So I would appreciate all of you guys, just trying to let people know that it's really important that our citizens' voices get heard. So.
Fantastic, Mayor. The only other things on there I was going to bring up is just the employee appreciation. Just put that on your docket for March 19th. That includes all of the council, planning commission, anyone else that's associated with the city at that point. And then there's several other events coming up after that. And I'd keep on your docket that Utah League Spring Conference. If you are going to go to that in St. George, that's April 16th through 18th. So get on your calendars today if you would like to do that, and then let Scott know if you're looking, 1, to register for that conference, and then number 2, to find lodging for that. The earlier you get lodging down there, the cheaper it's going to be and the better. So just keep us in the loop.
Yeah. Buzzy has committed 100%. So. Okay. Thank you. Council, anything left to say?
Oh, no, it's not important. Sorry.
Okay.
I was just gonna ask when I need to have my mayor's message to Scott, I'm assuming.
Probably like February 14th is my guess. That's a Friday.
Okay, perfect.
Okay, then Emily, would you like to make a motion?
Yeah,
Any-
motion to adjourn.
Okay, motion by Emily, second by Buzzy. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that passes.
Russ has a
Russ, did
question.
you have something?
Do you have a good recommendation for somebody in body work?
Uh-huh. It's just like there is no level of like just no.
If you don't understand, it's fine. I just don't know. Because if you have some
Right. Right.
oh my gosh. My customer, one of my kids was
Oh my gosh. That's crazy. You probably spend a ton of time in that canyon, but oh, I know. I know. And then you add, well, district judges, but then you add the weather to it. It's just insane.
It's probably far more expensive than it. That face the stupid door.
Oh, I know.
But
Pat, have you seen that?
I'm